rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run inside the 10. Head first. He dives off the 5-yard line.
65 horsepower trap. It might pop wide open, Rats.
Get this there! Was that there, Rats? Oh, it's gone, baby. Yes, sir, Rats. High snap. It's no good. The Chargers run it. Here comes the rush. He sidesteps. Can he throw? He can't. The ball flipped forward as loose. A wild scramble. 2 seconds on the clock. Casper grabbing the ball. It is rolled a fumble. Casper is recovered in the end zone. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most seedy.
Hello, and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. Oh, wow, it is, we're getting into the thick of this season, let me tell you. It is not particularly great for me, though. But anyways, with regards to all of us here, over to my right is Captain Jack of the Captain Jack RackEm podcast and channel. Check him out on the YouTubes. And we have
that's not for everybody else. That's for the dude that's I have to do opposite. So that's for that guy. Where the hell is it? That's
I don't even know
I
what
can't
you did,
do it.
but I'm assuming
I'm pointing at you.
I'm assuming it was egregious and aggressive.
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. And we have Alex Gibbons of the Airhead Addict with all of the great writing and material over there. He's got some great articles up on that site over there. Go have a look. And we have Coach Defense of the Lockdown Defense podcast. By the way, I checked out the pod last night again. It's great to see you and Kurt back. Please tell him I say hello.
I will do that.
And
Kurt,
I
how you feel
I
about
did not have any
the,
snarky comments. I will next week, though.
How you feel about the Lakers already getting eliminated from playoffs?
Look here, man. We're here to talk football here. It's not a
I know,
basketball
but
podcast.
you got 2 jerseys right behind you. I got to look at them. I just thought I'd get your thoughts. You know,
That's glory. We're not dealing with glory right now. This is rough sledding out here, but rough sledding out here, man. Listen, it was so bad that I didn't even watch most of the fourth quarter. I just went to sleep.
Yeah,
that's how bad it is.
Yep.
You're saying that was your take on the Lakers? You just went to bed?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm not going to lose sleep because watching the Lakers late night this year. I'm not going to do it. I'm not doing it. I'm not losing sleep. My sleep is precious.
Smart. That's smart.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. So I'll catch the highlights in the morning.
So, given the fact that we're going to try and get into our recaps in relative short order, just because that's where hopefully it's going to get interesting. Alex, let's start with you and the boring win or loss, rather.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see what Denver does against the Bills. The potent Bills offense.
We lost.
Yeah. Well, yeah, against the Bills though.
No, we lost in preseason.
Well, yeah. Okay. Anyways, really not a terrible loss to come away from, losing 24-20 to what everyone called, the greatest team in the league. And was supposed to be kind of leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else. And frankly, I thought it was kind of a morale win for KC, given how depleted they were on the defensive side of the ball. You had all rookie corners out there against Josh Allen and Diggs and kind of that versatile Buffalo offense. They did give up some big plays here and there, but for how I guess the national narrative was heading into the game, I really didn't think it was a bad loss. Tito, you're late.
He is late. Hey. And again, I don't even have.
Look at that time card, 6:41. That's late.
That's good. That's bad.
But a 24-20 loss in week, early part of the year, kind of towards the tail end of what was supposed to be the atrocious stretch of KC's beginning schedule. If you would have told me going into the season that they were going to be 4-2 with where the roster was at and sort of the retooling on offense as well as the youthful revolt on defense. I mean, I'd take that, and I think they're really gelling and kind of progressing each week, and heading into a very favorable stretch of the schedule, and frankly also getting healthier. So, not a bad loss. I have a feeling we'll see the Bills again in the playoffs, and I think it'll be a different game. But I will say it was kind of crazy. I don't know if you guys watched it like all the way through or not, but at the beginning, Romo literally is like, this is going to be a 24-20 type game.
Yeah,
I was like, son of a bitch. This guy right. It was like from the kickoff. He's like, I feel the vibe of this. This is going to be a 24-20 game.
Yeah, it's not going to be as high scoring as last game. Yeah, and he was right.
But honestly, though, like if you tell me, like I know Diggs went off. I had him fantasy, but so I wasn't upset about it. But for how the stats were passing versus the score, I think it's just a good testament to how well Casey's defense has been up to this point. But certainly teams are sort of developing a blueprint to play KC, and you saw with the Raiders, you saw the Bills do it. I know damn well that the 49ers are going to do it, and those heavy personnel run the ball sets, and that was really kind of the thing that hurt them the most, on top of just kind of some bad mistakes at bad times. But outside of that, I didn't think it was a terrible loss for what everyone thought would be this giant blowout for how good Buffalo and Josh Allen and Von Miller are. So I'll take it.
Okay.
We will too.
Yeah, I bet.
Of course. Yeah.
Hey, Raiders did really good. Finally didn't lose one this last week.
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. Yep.
I wanted to do a throw over to Coach on the Chiefs just in general. I heard a really interesting take, and I wanted to hear what Coach had to say, just because it was specifically to do with the defensive side of the ball for the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. And that is that the last several times the Chiefs and the Bills have played, the Bills have been able to put up well into the 30s, almost into the 40s in terms of points. Mm-hmm. And an interesting thing that I heard, which was the Chiefs have finally, in this game at least, been able to keep the Bills under that 30, like under that kind of 30-point range sort of thing. I wanted to know your take on what kind of impact you think that's going to have going forward if the two teams can't get into a higher scoring game, in terms of what that might mean.
Expound on that a little bit. You saying that their point differential was down in this game, and it was. But you want to know exactly what the cause of that was, or? Well,
I'm looking at the defensive side of the ball, because typically the Chiefs have obviously struggled when it comes to playing the Bills, because it's literally just been bombs away, score. And then in this game here, it was much more of a slugfest. The Chiefs defense certainly did keep the Bills more in check than they have by a long shot in some of the other games. So I'm just looking kind of for your feedback and insight into that.
Well, actually, I'm glad you actually brought that up, because it's actually going to lead into what I wanted to say initially, is that I think that this game was a different, had a different vibe, had a different feel. It played out differently. Mainly, and I guess it's a broken record, but it's mainly because of Tyreek Hill. I think that because he may have missed him holistically in totality, but I think he missed him this game, because we can all agree that he was a difference maker in the game in the playoffs. And with Tre'Davious White being out, if Tyreek Hill was on the team, I'm pretty sure he would have had a field day, because it would have been a corner on the field that can contend with him with Tre'Davious White being out. So I think that
Chiefs actually got the points though that they needed before the half in less time than the 13 seconds, and didn't use no Tyreek Hill. So like I'm getting real upset at hearing this. That's just the scapegoat for everyone.
It wasn't for me. It was purely for this game because of the matchups. I think that
the big difference from being at the game last year was that we saw Buffalo make more of an effort to run the ball, and not you had teams last year that were kind of getting into these throwing matches with KC and not really worried about the time of possession. It was more of the big explosive plays. I mean, Buffalo last year, I know for a fact, had like 3 40-plus passes down like on Daniel Sorensen. I believe was at least 2 of them. But they weren't as focused on keeping the Chiefs offense off the field and making these efforts to hand them. I mean, they have the same players in Singletary and Zach Moss and those guys, but I felt this week or this year, they just made more of an effort of getting those guys touches and kind of nickel and diming down the field rather than having Josh Allen just kind of do what Mahomes does and roll around and find a big explosive play.
You say you think they made a concerted effort to run the ball more so this game than they did in previous?
Yes. Well, they did run a lot more heavier sets. They did what the Raiders gashed KC's defense with Josh Jacobs just for whatever reason decided to stop doing it. But I think and you saw Buffalo do the same sort of offensive schemes and approach, at least in terms of comparing it to how they played them last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't believe in the Buffalo Bills running game, whether you try it or not. At this point, their running game is essentially Josh Allen. So, may have made more attempts, but the idea of it being effective is still you made your hay with the passing game. I mean, let's be honest about it. Whether you tried to run out of more heavy sets or have heavy sets on the field and more tight ends, but you still threw the ball effectively. So I don't. Yeah,
they ran the ball 31 times though. I mean, that's
but how many yards though?
125. So I mean, but you're not doing these quick passes that and sort of faster pace, kind of these quick slants, quick bubbles, and get back on the ball. They were kind of letting time sort of play out, and also executing, getting points when they needed to. But to me, that was the biggest difference, was that they made more of a conscious effort to keep the time of possession on their side at all points of the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because I think that what that does essentially that, although it was a pretty decent offensive scoring game for both sides, I mean, you're looking at 40-plus points between the two teams, I still think that does lend to the time of possession. If you do make an attempt to run the ball 31 times, whether it's effective or not, you do shorten the game. That's what, you can take a page out of Brown's game and a few other games where they did, basically a ball control style offense, and they limited Mahomes' possessions. And then without those, that blowing the top off explosive person like Tyreek Hill, you don't get those quick hitters. So if you're going from 10 drives to 6, then that limits your ability to put up points regardless. And if you force a punt here too, then obviously your point differential is going to be down. So I think that lends to the idea that if the running game did play into it, whether whoever had the many yards, Josh Allen or Zach or Devin, whoever it was, or just by committee, that lended to the idea that their time of possession was going to sway to the Buffalo side of the ball. And, it would keep you honest. I mean, from a defense perspective, if you did run the ball that many times, you did make any hay, much like the Raiders did, you're going to make the defense play honest. And which is going to open up passing lanes, which, a la, Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs, making plays down the field in that third and fourth tier of the defense. So, I would say there's definitely something that you can easily say that if they do manage to have a balanced scheme, at least against the Chiefs, it would lend to the idea that they, have a better chance of beating them. Now, I will say this as well, it's always a tale of two halves of the season. Because you did the same thing, in
they blew them out, man. That was on my birthday last year. That was terrible.
Right. The playoffs was a different story. Andy's always got a trick up his sleeve or 3.
That's what I'm saying too. They didn't have. I mean,
and a cheeseburger.
They had all rookie corners out there. You didn't have Fenton playing. You didn't have McDuffie. Willie Gay was still on his suspension.
Right.
So for that, to me, for that kind of defensive showing for who was not out there, that is a starting player in the Chiefs defense, I think that's kind of a good narrative and thing to utilize or rely on, moving forward. There he is, Callahan, the ultimate bot.
No. Yeah.
Callahan.
That's funny. Yeah. So, overall, I think that again, it could be a tale of two seasons because the playoff game could be a totally different story. But the two things that we should key in on in this matchup and the takeaways from it is that there is an option here that if things break right, this game could be in Buffalo in a sense.
Oh yeah,
for the first time, since in this recent history.
Yeah.
Of that, so I would definitely say that could be a difference maker because it's going to be cold, could be snowing, it could be gale force winds. You don't know. I mean, it's anything. It's literally pun intended Wild Wild West in weather in Buffalo in December and January. So we definitely have to factor that in, and the idea that I feel like the pass rush, Von Miller. To me, and I said it last week, he's going to be a difference maker. He still got a lot of life left in the tank, and he sacked Mahomes twice, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah,
maybe just once. I'm trying. Let me look.
I feel like it was at least twice. Yeah, at least twice. Yeah, so yeah, I definitely say that
he definitely closed it out.
And the commentator drilled it on the heavy. He said that it's always at the right moment, like when you got to make a play or need a play, Von's your guy.
Yeah,
so
he is. Von's always been that way, though.
Yeah,
Vaughn has always been that way.
I saw some Bills podcasts going into the week. They're like, we got Von Miller. He knows how to beat the Chiefs. I'm like, bro, Von Miller, if you look at his overtime, all-time record, is not the winning one against KC.
Yeah, that's rough sledding when he's the Broncos. A little rough sledding there.
It was just funny though. But like,
right.
you have to remember he had a good portion of his career where Peyton Manning wasn't there.
Oh,
like,
I know.
It was the block of time when Manning was there where he just slaughtered it.
So Peyton was on there with 3 seasons, right?
Yeah. And then
3 seasons?
I think.
Yeah, it was like 12, 13, 14, and 15, I think.
Those 4 years? Okay.
4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't want us to get all the way into the Buffalo game and stuff here because we got more games to cover, and we want to get into our recap before we all have to get going for the evening. I did want to quickly bring up a few of the comments and chat here. Guys, let's keep this going. Really love the volleying back and forth here.
What did Hefe do, guys?
Never mind. Don't feed him. Don't feed the troll.
That's my one Chiefs fan.
Dave, I just want to let you know, in the boot is a lager. It's me scraping the bottom of the barrel. I have not gone to the beer store yet. I will be doing that tomorrow. And up after the lager, because I'm now out of beer, will be Canadian maple whiskey because I'm Canadian.
We got that.
That's just the way I roll. So after all that, I do want to also bring up Matthew's comment here. We have not made it to the Chargers-Broncos game yet. Coach and I are going to get right into that after we throw over to Captain to go over the Raiders game and give us a little recap in terms of what has gone on there.
This ought to be quick.
Yeah, let's talk about the other guys' brake pads now instead, right? You got it, Cap?
Yeah, right.
No, I got a couple things going on. Apologies, and when you said brake pads, it reminded me that my son actually.
I was doing this Callahan chat. I was just.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, my son actually came over and replaced, but all my brake pads, all my rotors, and the bearings on my truck. Actually, it's in my truck. It will be his truck once I get my new truck. But I'm giving him the money for the parts. And $50 for gas definitely was a lot nicer than giving the dealership $1,300 for something that he's going to be getting pretty soon as well. So that was nice. That was nice. So apologies if I missed it. I'm trying to keep eyes on two things.
So back to football and not breaking. Hopefully the goal here is that the AFC West keeps moving forward and we start seeing some collective wins, particularly for the Broncos. But nonetheless, how was the Raiders game and what were your thoughts on it? And what would you like everyone to know in terms of what went on and maybe what you might like to see?
Well, the Raiders definitely played well this past weekend. I think they were in Mexico or various other places. A couple of them played golf. The Raiderettes were out doing their thing as well. It was a fantastic weekend. Definitely a non-losing weekend. So there's my synopsis of this past weekend, sir.
Tossing some Coronas around. No.
Avatar, I see you. Appreciate you.
Avatar, good to see you, brother.
NFL Nation Live. There's a joke in there somewhere. Like 4 alcoholics walk into a bar. Is normally how it starts. No, but anyways, so with regards to the Raiders game, Captain, aside from outcome and all that other kind of stuff, is there anything you wanted to see from it though?
From the Raiders game?
Yeah,
they had a bye, right?
They had a bye.
Yes, I know.
Oh, this got to be. I know it's got to be a troll. It had to be a troll.
What's going on here?
I guess the only thing
The only right answer is I wanted to see them play.
No. I wanted to see them win by a bigger score.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
All right.
I wanted the defense to play better. Actually, I wanted the offense to score more. I wanted the defense to play better. I wanted a shutout. And of course, the referees came in and effed up the entire game because they
Of course they did.
They played a role in that bye. They played a role in that bye. It was still a horrible call by Boger and Hussey and a bunch of other people that I'm not going to go into because I don't want my blood pressure to go up, and we will discuss it more. And see, this is where the segue comes in. We will discuss it more at NFL Nation Live, coming at you live, 9 p.m. Eastern time on NFL Nation Live, as well as my channel, so stay tuned. See how I did that?
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
That's okay. So I guess, Tony Romo predicted not only the Chiefs game and its score, but he also predicted the Raiders score as well. So I guess he truly is a savant of some sort.
It's a win for the Raiders.
They called him who?
No
Claire?
games and no arrests.
Yeah, Claire. I never heard of clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant is,
I know what clairvoyant
I
is.
believe that is an old wooden ship.
Oh, that's awesome.
Civil War era, right?
I thought it was a chapter in the book of that Amelia Earhart, Carlton Banks offense. That's what I thought.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
Fantastic.
I know what clairvoyant.
The Amelia Earhart offense.
I have more of a comprehension of a level than a person that I won't mention in here that's been trolling. Anyway.
Understood. So
no, not you, Alex. Not you. You actually have a college degree.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
You got a doctorate.
Do you really?
Well, yeah.
Dr. Givens?
Doctorate. Well, I'm
Insurance doctor.
I'm a doctor of the law.
Doctor in insurance. Okay.
So, Coach, we had quite an interesting game on Monday. I know of at least 3 brothers who are barely recovering from potential heart attacks. That 2 of which were at the game.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, Coach, myself, and all 3 of the Bolt Bros were all in a group chat during the Chargers Broncos game. And we'll just say we had a very interesting conversation. And
it's one of those things you can't.
But it was honestly, if but nothing else, it was entertaining because it was so close. But there was so much that went wrong for both teams that, I mean, it's really difficult in terms of starting somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's rough. I mean, it's a lot of mistakes were had on both sides of the ball. I mean, you would think that, especially with the drive that Russell had in the beginning of the game, the way the first 2 or 3 possessions went, you would think that the Chargers was coming out slow and the Raiders were finally righting the ship. They had 10, 11 days to kind of work on their offense, get their timing down, get everything. Huh? What I said?
You played the Broncos. You said the Raiders.
I'm sorry, the Raiders. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Raiders are always on your mind.
How can you not compare the 2?
It's Wednesday, and you're on the Wild Wild West podcast.
Oh, okay. Now I'm back.
Okay.
Now I'm back.
Right,
honestly, I think giving the Broncos Derek Carr's a compliment. I mean,
okay.
And you're also a Chargers fan, apparently.
$250 million QB ain't looking.
Yeah, I did get that right. I saw my hand. I was like, yeah, I know where I'm at. Okay. All right. So yeah, I think that the Broncos coming out with Russell. I said the quarterback right. I said the team wrong. Clearly, I know I said Russell, but Russell coming out with the first drive, hitting Dulcich on that whip route. I was like, oh boy, here we go. They actually they want to find the offense this week. You know, he hadn't had offense in 5 weeks. You want to have offense this week. And then it came back down to status quo. It came back down off the high horse, and it was status quo. But, you know, our woes are the same. You know, and the fact that somebody gave Corey Linsley a people burrito or something like that and gave him food poisoning, and he couldn't play as a food poisoning, really messed our O-line chemistry up. So that was a problem. You know, I saw the 2 games that we've had constant pressure on Herbert. Linsley has not played or went out at a certain stretch of the game because of injury in the Chiefs game. So not having him, still not having Keenan Allen, our offense is sputtering. And I have to give credit where credit is due. I'm still, I can't, put a feather in the cap with the offense yet, obviously, but the defense for the Broncos is legit. It's legit. Their front 7, the back end of it, I know Richie gives Justin Simmons a lot of crap, but him being in there with Stearns being out, Surtain, that D-line, DJ Jones. Listen, DJ Jones gave Zion Johnson fits. Okay, it's for the first time this year. He had 3 holding penalties on this guy throughout the whole game, and we had never seen that from Zion Johnson since he's been a Charger.
DJ Jones is unbelievable.
Yeah, oh my God, he's just a mammoth of a man. That's the problem. Like he's just stronger than strong. Like Zion is strong, and they were going at it to the point where Zion had to hold him a few times, obviously, to keep him off of Herbert. So, I definitely give the defense a lot of credit for being stout. We couldn't run the ball at all, and our main receiver was blanketed, and I feel like Herbert had I guess you can say a ghost of Christmas or Surtain past, in a sense, when he didn't want to throw at Surtain all night because of the fact that he picked him off twice last year. He remembered that. So he's like, okay, unless somebody's butt naked wide open, I'm not throwing anywhere near Surtain. He didn't all night.
If Surtain's around.
Right. so like I said,
not look to that side of the field.
Right. And then, with our kicker getting hurt in the first half, I was like, oh, here we go again, but the I guess the icing on the cake for us is that fact that most games, the way they spin, in a sense, the way they kind of trend in this direction, where the game was going, very sloppy, a lot of mistakes on both sides, we typically don't win those games. So the fact that somehow or another Dustin Hopkins was making kicks with a half a leg,
and making that winner, that was sick.
It was crazy, right? So I'm just like, I was just amazed that we even won the game, because I would just shake my head. I didn't want to tell Richie this in the chat because I just gave him too much ammunition. But I was like, we typically don't win these kind of games, so I'm really nervous. And then, lo and behold, the penalty at the end of the game with the muff punt, I was like, oh wow. So we got 2 special teams. These 2 special teams penalties that went, or miscues that went our way. Normally they don't go our way. Our special teams usually is the root of our existence. So kicking, punt return, and kick return, and giving up blocked punts, we always typically on the short end of those sticks. So I definitely believe that, although we're not playing the best football right now, I think that we are happy at 4-2. That's my take.
No, I look, Surtain, I'll be honest, and I've owned this from day one. I was not happy with the pick. Not that I didn't think he's a good player, just that I felt that we should have gone a different direction given the needs of the team at the time and how well we were playing, or not how well we were playing. Specifically guys like offensive linemen and things like that. I just felt that we had other needs that I thought were really important for our team. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you can't deny it. The guy is
he's a stud.
He is elite in terms of as a cornerback, and
probably like easily top 3 corners in the NFL.
Sure, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. And
Ramsey,
what I like
maybe,
to see about him,
Ramsey's not even.
He's gotten better.
Yeah,
right. Like he's actually making progress, which is amazing to see.
We have to address the idea this kid's in the second year. Like he's not a wily veteran. He's a second year player.
His dad was pretty solid.
I was going to say
his dad was a great corner. But the difference in the 2.
Yeah, being that he's a prodigy, he does have an advantage over other people that are second-year corners. True. Because he lives it, breathes it, has the lineage, the DNA. So again, he has an unnatural advantage in that respect, which is good for him, bad for everybody else.
But what's interesting about Surtain outside of his dad, because his dad was more of a zone cover corner. Now, Surtain's money is man to man.
It is.
Like he was plastering to Williams all night. Like, I'm just like, man,
He
like,
shut him down.
I can't give credit where credit's due. Like, I'm not a hater. Like, you listen, and it's one of those things too, Rich. I agree with you. Like, certain plays that you wanted to go after in the draft, you feel like we have better, more, pressing needs. But when they pick that guy and he's a stud, you're just like, well, it is what it is. You got to live with it. Because I'm sure if you didn't have him Monday night, then it would have been a different story.
That's one of those times where I'm happy to be wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm happy, like, good, fine. Like, you hit a home run.
Mm-hmm.
That was, begrudgingly, I will say that's the right pick. Right.
Agreed.
It still doesn't mean we still don't even have some of those glaring holes still on the team.
True. Still do. Because
right?
I'm still looking for the Chargers to draft a legit receiver that can stretch the field. I'm still waiting on that. I've been begging for that for 3 seasons. We still haven't done it.
Zed's got it pretty accurate, right?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, because did y'all realize that JC got benched in the game? Did you realize that, Richie, during the game?
I did.
I was going to ask you.
I feel like that's the thing, though. Like, I feel like New England, these players that work up to get a big contract elsewhere almost never pan out. Like, I cannot think of someone who left New England and was still as successful as they were in that system.
Outside Tom Brady.
Trey Flowers got that fat contract in Detroit. He didn't do anything. They cut his ass like 2 years into it.
Right.
Like,
Rob Gronkowski, Kyle Van Noy.
That's about it.
Your list is ended basically there for my.
Yeah. Tom,
even
Gronk,
Tom Brady,
and Van Noy. That's it. Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like it's just something weird with like New England, where like those guys fit very well into whatever Belichick does in their system, and then when they get out, they just never. No part of their game ever meshes. That's why I was like,
I have a theory.
People were all about J.C. Jackson going to the Chiefs, and I kind of didn't want it for that kind of reasoning alone, whether it be an idiotic way of thinking about it or not. But I feel like it's kind of true. But Rich?
You kind of had to do it. We needed a good corner, so you kind of had to, spend the money based upon his production. But I think the jury's still out. I'm not giving up on JC. A lot of Chargers fans on Twitter have though. They're running him the riot act. But Brandon said they're gonna keep working with him. He's gonna start this week. He got to go up against DK and Tyler Lockett. So trial by fire. Let's get it going. I mean, it's either the ankle, the system, or confidence. But two of those 3 things can be fixed.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. I'm still holding out hope that he can be what we paid him to be.
In my opinion, I have a theory that I think I responded to someone on Twitter on, which was the New England has a very structured destination coming out of the draft. So you're coming from college into the pros, and it's very, very rigid and very structured.
Mm-hmm.
And part of there's certain guys that are undisciplined naturally, like just they are not a disciplined person. And so some of those guys that are not naturally disciplined or self-motivating, or whatever you want to call it, some of those guys need that kind of structure or need that coach or the coaching staff that's going to look over their shoulder and smack them upside the head to say, get your rear end out there and do the work. And I do wonder if the issue between, say, New England and what you're having in with the Chargers there is perhaps, I'm not saying perhaps, you just don't have the same structure or rigidity that a guy like J.C. Jackson needs.
Well, that could be said for a lot of people to leave New England because that's a one of a kind system. Like most people have laid back, you're a professional, manage your own business type of deal. I'm gonna let you be a grown man. I'm not gonna, put you in a military style camp, because I feel like a lot of people equate being in New England like the military. There's certain structural things that go on like the military, and there's no other system like it. So again, that might lend to the idea why people don't flourish outside of. To your point, they don't flourish outside of the system because that's all they're used to and that's all they know.
That's exactly it. That's what they're used to. They've come from college and they go right into a
they get that
bang,
money.
bang.
Right. Because Bill ain't paying. Bill ain't paying nothing.
I'm not in LA. I'm not in New England. I got whatever guaranteed.
Right. I get $80 million in a while.
I'd like to address that comment. Just because I ain't paying doesn't mean that I'm not the best coach in the NFL. It's on to Cleveland.
Did you guys see the clip of that rookie special teamers try to give Belichick the ball?
Oh, that was the most awkward thing in the world. I saw that. It was
all I
so
thought was the
awkward.
replacement. So he's like, "I got you the football." He's like, "Who the hell
Awkward.
is that guy?" Who's
I was like, "Who is he?"
Yeah.
Somebody put in the comments.
Locker after the game.
Somebody put in the comments saying, "I bet you Bill doesn't know who that is."
Like he's probably asking, "Who the hell's 41?"
Right. There you go.
Why did 41 just try to hand me the ball?
Exactly.
Who does he think he is?
Basically.
So anyways, I that's my take on JC. And yes, I saw that he got benched.
Yeah, I see Balled Up Baby in the chat. I forgot she was in there. What's going on over there?
Oh, I threw up Bolt Up Baby. She was in here earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on kind of the ability or inability to stop kind of that middle section of your field on the offensive side of the ball? You guys struggled once you got past the D line. So once you got into the linebacking core, we were able to get some yards that I was not expecting, because I did expect your linebackers to linebackers and frankly your safeties to slow down a little bit more in the middle section of the field. We saw Dulcich basically be wide open on several plays. We saw obviously the touchdown catch, and that was just around where the linebackers and kind of the mesh point, if you will, between the linebackers and the defensive backfield.
So you saying your offense going against our middle tier of our defense? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I noticed that seemed to be where a good portion of the open plays were, and then we also had I don't even know what happened, but I mean, you guys let KJ Hamler just.
It was two miscues, and it was uncharacteristic. It's an influx going on between, because they're multiplying. What I guess you could say, they're doing different things with Nazir Adderley and Aloy Gilman, right? They're and I'm not sure exactly what I guess you can say delineation is when it comes down to their snaps and what sets they play in and what downs they play, but. I would think that it would come from that side, but for some reason on Derwin's side for one play, now Hamler play, he was like lost in coverage. I'm like, I don't know if it was a miscommunication or what, but they let him go run free. He let him run clean past him, and I'm like, what happened there? And it was on Derwin's side in this deep half, and I'm like, okay, that's got to be a miscommunication. He doesn't usually make that mistake. And then the idea of maybe not trusting what's going on his other side, because he's Adderley one played and Gilman the next. So I don't know. It's something weird going on in the back end. But
what did the Broncos do passing though in the second half?
I was just going to say that because that was all in the first half. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that because I was literally just going to say that was all in the first half.
And then run through for like 15 yards in the second half or something.
Yeah, it got corrected in the second half because they had very little production in the second half.
No, he threw for 50 or more than 15 yards. We just happened to have so many penalties that's all we actually had as a net gain.
Oh, okay.
I will say it was pretty savage for Mathis to get like 5 PIs. Oh my god.
Yeah, that it was. I mean, it was the PI calls, the holding calls. It was holding calls, the PI calls. It was just
I
crazy.
agree. I think was it Coach that said that the PI needs to just be 15 now.
I did say that.
I agree with that because
I think it shouldn't be a spot foul at all.
Yeah,
roughing the passer needs to be dialed back and or less of a penalty, less of an egregious penalty.
Make it 10 yards. I mean,
make it 10 yards or make it 5. Because it's 15 automatic first. That's just crazy. And then passing the phrase being a spot foul, those are game changing penalties. You extend drives. You get a roughing the passer call or passing the phrase call on third down. That's extending the drive. You go to punt. Now you got a first down, a new set of downs, and you likely will give up points in that regard a lot of times. So
I agree with that. But the minute that you change that rule, let's say that a certain quarterback that looks like a cross between the daughter of Roseanne and a frog, or a certain wonder boy who is like in his third year in the league.
The daughter of Roseanne.
Come on, man, go with me here, okay? Anyway, I'll account. If Mahomes or if Herbert gets shellacked, right? Gets shellacked on a roughing the passer call, and it's only like 5 yards, and oh, by the way, they're out for the season. you guys would be screaming bloody effing murder that they didn't do enough for it. So you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, well,
No,
it's more about PIs.
I was talking about the roughing the passer.
He's talking roughing the passer, right?
Yeah. I don't listen. It's getting out of hand. Like, I'm not saying it shouldn't be a stigma, but it's getting out of hand. Like,
then you got people like the guy that looks like Sid in Toy Story underthrowing balls, so he gets a PI call at the 2.
Oh, well, okay. Well, there you go.
There you go. I get
there
it.
you go.
Coach, what my biggest issue with some of those pass interference calls is there was 2 of them that were just egregious, and I completely agree. Like it was just brutal. Now,
I didn't review all of them, but the one you said in the chat when we were watching the game, he held him like that. That was a call. He held the receiver that play. Now all of them, I'm not saying all 5 were legit, but the one you was harping on towards the end of the game, you was like, that's not a PI. I said, oh yeah, he held him that one. That was that was legit.
It was this is the problem I have is that yes, I will concede it was technically a pass interference call, technically by the rule of the law.
Technically, you're right. Yeah,
the eyes of the law. It's
right.
Look, in the eyes of the law, jaywalking is technically illegal or you can't do it. But at the end of the day, like, let me find me a cop that hasn't jaywalked. Like, it's just ridiculous, right?
Or speed, or
do anything. So just,
you can
just leave that alone. But what my problem was is that if you're not going to call, and I even said this in the chat, right, which is if you're not going to call it evenly on both sides and not call those types of things on the other end of the ball, even if the wide receiver wasn't within the play, it doesn't matter. The point being is if there's holding and pulling and hands overly handsy, whatever, those are all pass interference calls. Whether or not you want to admit it or not, they were, and there was a lot of them are not called on the Chargers. So my point in the chat is that based on the fact that they let the other ones go against the Chargers, all they're doing is picking on the rookie, right? They're like, hey, you're a rookie, you're going to get calls. And to his credit, he had 1 or 2 solid plays where he just brushed it off and owned the play.
I give him a lot of credit for not hanging his head and making more mistakes after he got called for the first one, because most people that at his age would have folded. Yeah, all calls are trash unless they help you right team. That's a good one, Jacob. I like that. I will say to that in PI, what they made up for in PI calls, they gave us holding calls for it. Like, you got PI calls and we got holding calls. So it's like, the putting our offense back 10 yards on 1st and 20 on several drives versus it being 1st and 10 or a first down
hard
for us.
To call that holding call against Zion when he.
But again, like I said, we had the amount of holding calls we had made up for the amount of PI calls y'all had. So it wasn't even in yardage, but it's almost even in regards to the game when you have your PI calls and we have our holding calls. So that was pretty much.
But that's my point, though. A PI, no, it's not, because a PI call is far more egregious of a penalty because you're gaining more chunk yardage out of it.
Yeah, well, I would say this, from a football schematic standpoint, having a spot foul, yes, it is more egregious and more yards. But an offense getting backed up that's already struggling, for instead of having 2nd and short to 1st and 20. Is almost just pretty much a drive killer. Like, name me an offense that consistently converts 1st and 20s into first downs. So even though you don't,
any team that the Raiders are playing, once the officials give them a call,
right? There you go. So my point being is that you pretty much waste a drive. If you get a holding penalty on 1st down, it's almost a dead drive in most cases. So and if you look at it from a point perspective, even though the PI calls were spot fouls, you got nothing but field goals at best out of those penalties. So, as the ebb and flow of the game is concerned, I would say that, you would pretty much, it's almost balanced in terrible penalties for both sides, because again, drives were wasted for the Chargers because of holding, and PI calls were putting the Chargers in a better spot because of the spot fouls. But yet again, you only got field goals. You got 1 touchdown and a bunch of field goals on both sides. So again, it did balance itself out holistically, but we still had way too many penalties on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, sure. Now, I do want to quickly address, because obviously it wouldn't be, you kind of you have to call out the elephant in the room, and that is the whole Russell Wilson situation with the Broncos and whatnot. I've seen your chats, guys. Here, I'm not going to shy away from this, and for anyone who actually knows me, I'm certainly one of the more critical Broncos fans out there of my own team. So as I look at this, I really do think that I think the Broncos made a huge mistake in this game by playing Russell Wilson. I think you saw Wilson come in having had the 10 days rest. He was partially recovered. I don't think he is fully recovered. And I think you saw that where you saw those 10 plays where he actually did really well. He looked very much like kind of Russell Wilson of old, if you will, moving the pocket, extending the plays with his legs, running for the extra yards, that kind of stuff. You saw a lot of what you're used to seeing from him. Problem is he took a few hits. He then landed on his kind of right on that shoulder blade where he's got the tear. And then later in the fourth,
he had like a million towels wrapped up
around
his shoulder. Like you can see all these Gatorade towels under
his
jersey.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. And the problem I have with that is that he's clearly not fully healthy, and is sometimes the player has to be safe from himself. And I as much as I would love to see Russ kind of put to bed and say, no, I can still do it and go out there and kill it, I think this was not the game to do it. I think you have to think longer term. You have him for 5, 6, 7 years out. You got to say, bite the bullet for 2 games, get us to the bye, sit him on the bench, put Brett Rippon in. Brett Rippon is a smart quarterback who has a good amount of the same tools that can run a lot of the same offense that Russ can. He's not quite as mobile, but I do think that Rippon actually might even fit a little bit more of Hackett's system just because of his style.
I think the Broncos should call Seattle. They got this backup QB that I think, given the right situation, can prove a lot.
I saw a Twitter feed that said that this man is the only one that can save the Broncos season. It was Drew Lock dancing.
They need a QB that can, word for word mouth, put on for my city.
There you go.
Yeah. So, like I said, in my opinion, I just think Russ needs to heal. I think he needs to get better. He needs to be given the time to do so. And frankly, I think the coaches need to understand that a competitor like Russ, make no mistake, he's a competitor and he is one heck of a quarterback, and he can be.
Save him from himself.
Exactly. You got to literally say no.
Wrong for that, BC. Wrong for that. So I got 2 quick questions, Rich. I want to ask you. Get your opinion real quick. So now is Russell's? He has a hamstring injury now too. Did I hear that? Okay. Yeah, he definitely needs to sit. Now, I'm being real. I'm being honest. He definitely at this point, he needs to sit. It's getting ridiculous.
He plays, he's just going to hurt something else.
Exactly, or hurt it works. So pull it off the bone and be done for months. So
or years.
I would say I want to ask you about Hackett. Like there a lot of focus has been on Russell and his struggles, right? But what role does Hackett play in the struggles?
So I was on Bolt Bros before the Chargers game. I think a couple of you guys were kind of
I popped in for a little bit.
Yeah, you guys joined us there, and go back and check that out. I know that they have promoted the fact I was on, and I know that we had Coach on there, and I had a great time with them. They're fantastic guys.
Those are my buds.
I broke it down as an 80-20 rule. So I believe 80% of what we're experiencing right now is on Russell Wilson, and I think 20% of it is on Hackett. And I might be willing to go as kind of low on Russ as 70 and then 30 on Hackett. And this is kind of why I have that breakdown. I have a very difficult time putting more than that on Hackett when I start seeing route concepts and plays where wide receivers and people are wide open and not being thrown the ball.
Yeah.
And that is more. That's not just one-off either. It's on multiple levels of the play and on multiple plays that get missed. And that's on the quarterback. And you expect a veteran quarterback like Russell Wilson to be able to see the field, read the field, and make those throws. And I look at all 3 quarterbacks in our division, Carr, Mahomes, and Herbert. Each one of those 3 quarterbacks has the ability to pan and scan that field on the multi-levels of route trees. And I'm not seeing Russ doing that. And in my opinion, that's a Russell Wilson problem, not a Hackett problem, because you expect that from a guy that is commanding that type of salary, right? I think that's fair. And then I look at why I have some of it on Hackett. Russell Wilson is also and clearly struggling. And So the reason why I put 30 on Hackett or 20 on Hackett is that Hackett then needs to start adjusting a little bit more by doing similar things to what we saw the Chargers do with Justin Herbert to try to save him from the pass rush that was killing him most of the day. And that is short routes right in that middle kind of intermediate section of the field and all that sort of thing. And I think that's extremely important. And we're not seeing those types of things. Most of our plays are kind of middle and in deep as opposed to shallow, quick, fast.
Okay. That's fair enough.
I was going to kind of ask about that too, though. In like how much you thought you kind of answered it, but I was kind of curious how much you would blame on Hackett or just the offensive play calling in general. Because it was kind of a thing that Chiefs fans or people around the league knocked Andy Reid for the longest time is, the beginning of the games, they're always so successful because they're running their scripted plays, whatever it's the first 2-3 drives that they, are heavily working through the week and come out and can execute really well. And I felt, and this might be a little bit of a mischaracterization, but I kind of had the sense from watching the Monday night game that, Denver obviously came out really strong. Russ was like 10 for 10, moving the ball really well. And then I got thinking, well, how much of this was their script, for the whole week of like, hey, we're running boom, 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 we're running this. And then it was like, once they got out of that, do you think the coaches they just don't know how to progress from that point? Because I feel like every Broncos game, and I've been forced to watch them because they're in primetime slots. But, I feel like every Broncos game, they come out really strong, and then it just aggressively tapers off. And then they're relying on their defense to make stops, and then you're relying on the offense to just move the ball far enough to kick a field goal, and let's see what happens at the end. So it's like, how much of this do you think, which like I said, you already answered to some degree, but like to me, it just seems like they don't know really how to progress from the early success once they're out of their sort of scripted set from the week,
I call it the Budenholzer syndrome because I get on Budenholzer from the Milwaukee Bucks about his lack of adjustments in game. So he usually game to game, he's usually good. Like he'll make the adjustment in the next game. There's a problem in the previous game, but he won't make them on the fly. I give Ty Lue a lot of credit. Speaking of basketball, of making in-game adjustments well. Now, if he has a problem making in-game adjustments and pivoting or leaning into things that work, then that's a coaching problem. That's a coaching problem.
Well, if you're referring specifically to the Broncos with that, because we've had some success early in the game with the offense, the problem I think is with that is that the scripted plays, they're almost being said you should throw to this person, you need to go to this person, you need to go to this person, and I still maintain and I still hold true to what my previous comments were is 80-20. Mm-hmm. A veteran quarterback, it is totally fair for a guy like Hackett to say, you want to go cook, you want to be the guy, you want to be the man.
Burn the bacon, dog.
Then make me some brisket, man. You know what I mean? Like,
hey, that's just a Herbert's thing, brisket.
Make me some brisket. Start putting together those 5-star meals for me, my man, in the kitchen.
Yeah, seriously.
And at the end of the day, what we're seeing ultimately on the field is scripted plays that come out at the beginning of the game for the Broncos typically look okay. Some of them look better than others, but generally they're okay. And then you're seeing a complete taper off, and it's literally a almost vertical downward curve. And the problem that I have with that is that tells me that Russ, although some of the plays I think are more issues just with Russ in general, but then I also think that you're seeing other things where Russ is injured right now. And I said this again on the Bolt Bros, which is if you're used to making a quick decision and being able to put some real velocity on the ball to squeeze a ball into a tight space, and you have the main muscle that's responsible for throwing the ball quickly and with velocity that is torn, you can't put that same zip on the ball. So,
Can't
for
do it.
example, what I mean by that is ultimately, so you have a crossing route that makes the difference between you throwing ahead of the receiver in stride and throwing it behind the receiver, potentially at the defender instead. And the Broncos sadly have seen multiple instances of that this year.
True indeed.
I've also
And
seen
I mean, heck, we even saw someone against the Chargers just this last game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting too, kind of the I feel like with every week there's more of a progression of like that Russ is not really a good teammate or like loses the locker room. And like I thought it was interesting that Richard Sherman had his podcast. I think it was last week, maybe. But Marshawn Lynch was on it. Yeah. And they go on this spiel about he's like, man, I'd love to reach out to him, but they're like, you meet his manager, and like how that even teammates got to go through Russ Wilson's manager if they just want to talk to him. And I mean, that really has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But I thought that was like interesting. And then it's like every game you see people with like a clip, like there was a clip of Gordon and Judy talking on the sideline. They're like, caption this, and everyone's like, man, we had to stop listening to Future in the locker room for this and like stuff like that. But it's just like I feel like that just keeps all kind of propounding with the rest of it.
Well, let's assume that's correct. So let's go on the premise and assume that Richard Sherman is not just kind of the bitter ex, and let's assume. Like, no, but I mean, let's just be honest. Like he has every potential of just being like kind of the bitter fool and is just complaining. But let's assume he's telling you the truth, and let's assume that that's correct. We have heard it from multiple people. Marshawn also did not deny that was also what he had to do either. So let's assume that what Richard Sherman said is 100% correct. Okay.
Yeah, Marshawn added to it.
Oh no, he did.
I can't really say what he said, but he definitely added to it.
Yeah,
he did.
So let's assume it's correct, right? Now, think when you come to a new team. So you come to a brand new team, and one of your main things when you come to a new team is to build up camaraderie, to build up a rapport, to build the timing with your receivers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If your receivers and your other teammates cannot reach out to you directly and they can't get into quick little things and kind of get into a bit of a mesh where you guys can start having a shorthand and all that kind of stuff, and all of your teammates have to go back through your managers in order to get in touch with you, I'm going to say that you're going to have a very hard time quickly getting on the same page, especially when throughout the offseason he was gallivanting all over the place as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. It's
interesting.
It's an ongoing saga. Let me put it that way.
It's saying, right? Like when it rains,
guys,
so.
I really do want to get into to next week's matchups where it's going to get super interesting, I think, and this is where we can really start getting into some really interesting things here.
Jack, to answer your question, also sorry, but I am happy that Hefe's here. So, although I can't see half of what he says, so maybe I shouldn't say that.
Oh, you should have seen the things he said about you. No, just kidding.
Come on,
Captain. Throwing over to you on the Texans. Just on that note, guys, I did want to make a general comment. We normally have a Texans 3-point stance with Mark Lane. He's a great friend of the show. He's really put in some extra time and done things at the last minute to help us out to get videos in. He has had an injury that has landed him in the hospital. So thoughts and prayers go out to him, and hopefully he has a speedy and quick recovery. I just wanted to call that out. Mark also went above and beyond when he could not help us out by giving us his information on the Texans and what he thought they needed to do to beat the Raiders. He did try to get us in touch with another Texans podcast to help us out. Unfortunately, the scheduling and timing was just really difficult in order to kind of have everything line up. So sadly, we're not going to have a 3-point stance with the Texans, but I did want to thank Mark Lane for all of his efforts and wish him a speedy recovery. And on behalf of everyone at the Wild Wild West, please get well soon.
Definitely, man. Appreciate you.
Thumbs up, Jesus, for you, man. There, brother.
Get him off the IR.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. It just, it's unfortunate. I really hope he's coming through, and he didn't make any reference to the fact that he felt that it wasn't going to be anything but a successful recovery. But nonetheless, I did want to give him his due and shout out for just being a great friend of the show. Captain, with that in mind, What are your thoughts on the Texans-Raiders game coming up?
Well, actually, wow, caught me a little bit unprepared because I was really, really. I do better when I bounce off of what somebody else says. But the thing is about the Texans is that they're like us. They are better than their record indicates. Okay, they got a good defense. You know, a la Lovie Smith. They granted they're people are already saying, well, that's a win for the Raiders. It's a loss for the Texans. I still remind everybody that the Raiders have the worst record in the NFL coming off a bye. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I do know that in the last 20, I think they're 3-17. Okay. I would like to actually say that I'm very happy that the NFL for the second year in a row, didn't have the Chiefs playing the Raiders after a bye, because that was an annual occurrence. You know,
I always liked it.
Check the Chiefs bye week, and then you know that the Raiders game is the next week. That's how you knew when they were playing the Raiders, because it was always the week after the Chiefs bye. But for 2 years in a row now, I don't know. I think you might need to re-up those payments to whoever you were paying off in the scheduling department there.
We got Tennessee after the bye now.
Yeah, but well,
thanks, Goodell.
But like I said, the Raiders' record after the bye is like 3-17 for the last 20 years, and it's just horrible. So everybody's already saying, well, you really need to come up and play better. Well, the Texans are a decent team. Obviously, they're going to be coming to Vegas, which is one good thing. It's a home game for the Raiders. The Raiders need to continue doing what they have been doing the last several years, several games, which is to continue their running game. When they're running the ball, they're playing a lot better. And I can say this as well, and I know that Alex can attest to this. The Raiders are not a 1-4 team. They are in record, but they have a better team disposition than their 1-4 record indicates. Okay, and that's not being a homer saying that. I'm saying statistically, they're in top. I think they're top 8 in offense. What's taking them down is that their defense is playing horribly. Okay, you give up, you lose those 20 points to the Cardinals with the running little midget. You know, comes back, and then they pop. They pop.
Well, he's about to be irrelevant. Call of Duty's coming out, so
next week.
Done. Yeah,
next week.
Toast. Got that new Warzone pop in.
So, what's our prediction then for the Cards record? Do we see a losing streak in the horizon?
2 games. Yeah, I think it's like it's statistically shown. Once Duty's out, Murray's out.
Okay, well, good. I wish we would have played them after. I mean, because everybody said, well, Raiders got an easy thing because the Raiders are playing them because what's his nose was out. D-Hop, thank you. D-Hop was out. So that could have been.
We got him back. Bless up.
Yeah, but I still say the Raiders need to run the ball. Offensively, they are scoring enough points. Defensively, they need to be better. They need to finish the game. They need to play all 4 quarters defensively. And it's not a gimme game. I will be there. I have yet to miss a game this season. In fact, I don't miss a game until November. So I will be at the Texans game, then Nolans, then Jacksonville, and then I think I miss the game after that. But I think it's going to be closer than people attest. I still think the Raiders can and will win, because God forbid if the Raiders don't, there's going to be the fourth sign of the apocalypse that all of these people are going to be calling for. And I've already seen it on the boards. Raiders should tank for a number 1 quarterback. I'm like, okay, well, let me see.
AJ Stroud would be pretty dope. Bryce Young.
No. I give to you, Jameis Winston. I give to you Mitchell Trubisky. I give to you Baker Mayfield. I give to you even the guy that the Jets abused, who was a top quarterback. It doesn't always attest.
Wilson.
Sam
Yeah.
Darnold. Sam
No,
Darnold.
Darnold. Wilson, the jury's still out on. But again, it doesn't always work. So you don't do something stupid like that when the team is really starting to gel. The offensive line is playing a lot better than it did at the beginning of the year. Okay. And I just really think that it is time now. You lose to the Chiefs by 1 point in Arrowhead on a Monday night game. And I'll take what we have there in that. I'm very positive about it. I'm not a homer about it, but I still think the Raiders will win in a tight game.
Oh, yeah.
And what did my clairvoyant Texans fan say in his stead there, Rich?
Raiders are bad. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Good ball.
I'm
Peters.
gonna so love when we whoop your ass the last game of the year, man.
I said I would take a little bit of the Texans run. I got it right here. Raiders are bad. Okay. Give us Pierce. Okay.
Oh
All right.
man.
There we go.
All right now. So you think it's gonna be a close game though, Cap? You really think it's gonna be close?
I think so because I will give Lovie Smith's defense playing well in a show me game for the Texans as well. I will give that. It'll be a close.
I mean, their largest loss is 10 points to the Chargers. So,
well, that's a good point. Can't really argue that.
But honestly, I think from watching the Raiders against the Chiefs, I think they need to make more. I mean, while running, but I think they need to make more of an effort to do what they were doing against KC and throw those deep balls to Devontae. Because I really think if you get if you get the Texans out of
you did it too. You did it too.
I think if you get them out of being able to run and you force Davis Mills to have to beat you, I think that'd be a pretty good game.
Well, what I will say is if you got to run the ball in order to have people suck up, and then those patterns are open.
But at the same time, I don't know. I mean, what do they have? Stingley, but I don't even know. I mean, he's a rookie. I can't think of who else is in the Texans secondary that could, stay up to course with Devontae. Especially if you got a healthy Waller and Renfro out there too. I just don't see how they'd have enough people to mesh up without someone almost aggressively being open every time. But
I'm more concerned about Moreau being out than I am being with Waller. Waller's checked out since last year. He double checked out once he got paid. And I honestly, like I said, I'm more hurt with Moreau being out because he is a Saubert type of tight end.
Oh,
yes, Dolchich. It's Dolchich now. We're on Dolchich.
Okay,
Team Dolchich.
Oh no, I'm still on Saubert.
Give the D.
I can't remember who Richie's bitch is, but I just thought it was Saubert. Okay.
Oh.
What's that?
Hey, there's your ringer for the week. Okay, there you go.
Anyway, that little Wayne lighter sound,
right?
For the Burns.
Oh man!
But no, with Moreau being out, Horsted is a decent tight end, but he's nothing to write home about. Moreau being out with that knee still hurts. Okay. Waller has not shown anything this year. In fact, he's dropped more touchdowns than probably the Raiders have caught in the tight end field. Okay. And I really would say that Waller needs to perform, I'm almost going to hate saying this. I'm almost asking Green Bay if they take him for a couple of those picks that we lost.
Doubtful.
Yeah. No, hold your breath on that one.
The fact that you're asking about it.
Right, exactly. No
dice.
dice.
Yeah, Carlos said it best. Who's Waller? Yeah, I don't know who he is either.
Wow. That poor guy. He's been through enough.
Yeah.
Stall him out, Debo. Stall him out.
So you're thinking it's a close game. I tend to agree. I do think what you're going to find is that Texans have a bit of a better running game than you think.
Oh, I don't think he's clueless on that. I think he knows that. I think Damian Pierce is going to be coming downhill in an angry way.
Pierce. I know all about Damian Pierce.
Yeah. He's going to be coming downhill in an angry way, and I think all the Raiders know that. I mean, so that's not lost on them.
Are Stingley and Steven Nelson. I mean,
Desmond King's in the slot, the former Charger. So yeah, you got that.
Yeah, there's a reason he ain't on the Chargers anymore.
That's a good point. But I will say that the pass rush is very pedestrian for the Texans. So Carr should have time. Yeah. They should have time to throw the ball.
They got all the old Buffalo washouts. Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison.
There you go. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So I did want to
not the WNBA though, Charles.
Funny.
Jesus.
That's funny.
It's true though.
I did want to expand out and get some more of the games covered here while we have all of us here and present. I know Captain's got to go very shortly. I want to cover off the Chargers versus Seahawks game.
Ooh.
Coach. This is directed at you. For that, we have our 3-point stance coming up with the Seahawkers podcast. I'd like to thank Adam for jumping on. And Coach, see what Adam has to say.
Let's do it.
What's up, Broncos country? Adam here from the Seahawkers podcast. Just want to check in with you, see how you're riding. You riding good? Well, I wasn't here to take shots all day. Wanted to come at you guys with 3 things that we need to do to maybe beat the Chargers. Number 1 is to score more than 16 points. Okay, maybe I wasn't done taking jets. But first thing actually would be is to get our pass rush going. One of the things that I noticed with you guys this last week against the Chargers is you guys got a lot of great pressure against Justin Herbert, and it really sped up his clock. It made everything shorter passes and things of that nature. The run game isn't outstanding. That might be something that we can handle. But if we can get the pass rush going, we may have a chance for our terrible defense to actually stop their passing. Number 2 thing that we need to do to beat the Chargers this next week is just the opposite. Stop their pass rush. I mean, they harassed Russell Wilson all freaking night on Monday Night Football. And while our offensive line is healthier, and I think is a little better right now just because of all the injuries that the Broncos possess on the offensive line, the 2 young tackles have been pretty good for us, whether that's Cross or Lucas. Now, this last week, Cross actually struggled quite a bit against the pass rush, and I think that they're going to need to have a tight end out there quite often to help chip against Khalil Mack. Otherwise, it could be a long day for Geno, and we might not even get to 16 points. Number 3 would be to establish Ken Walker III. Now, with Rashad Penny out, that's been kind of a bummer for us. But with the drafting of Kenneth Walker, we have a lot of hope in him. And you saw him really break out in his last game. If we can actually run the ball with consistency, and I'm not talking the boom and bust kind of runs that we saw last week where it's -1 or +40. We need to be able to get those chunk yards, 4 to 5 yards per rush, much like you guys did with Latavius Murray. When you guys were on schedule, you guys had much more manageable 3rd downs, and I think that's going to be a huge key for us as well.
It's back, baby. I love it. I love that 3 of us.
Y'all had to see these jokers behind stage. I'm over here crying, laughing. These jokers are jamming to the music. I don't even know if y'all heard the guy talking. I'm not even sure.
The minute I heard, I was like, "Oh yes."
And by the way, Alex, when you duck out, make sure that they're actually on the 3-point stance so we don't see you leave.
It was.
No, it was not. You ducked out before the 3-point stance hit.
Our fans do not want the money shot.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Yeah,
so with that in mind, Coach, yes, he does very much have a beard very similar to my own.
Yes.
Believe it or not, he and I actually get along really well. We had a great conversation.
and the beards we trust. I get it.
What do you put in yours?
Wait, what? You put product in yours? How do you get it? Yeah.
I've had a beard like this since I was like in grade 9.
Wow. You're like, sir, you belong in this class?
So, are you our new substitute?
Right. He's like, how old are you, sir? I'm 14. Well, you look 40.
It's a bad
Good
boy.
like that.
Funny story.
Like
The drinking age here is 19, and so I was
Started
buying
drinking
beer.
at 14.
I was drinking at 14.
There
And
you
so
go.
I walked in on my birthday when I turned 19, like literally the day of my 19th birthday. And the guy said, "Sir, I'd like to see your ID." And I said, "Well, thank goodness you never asked for this before."
That's hilarious.
I remember
So-
when I turned 21, my family like took me, which obviously I drank before that. I was like, "Oh, I don't know what to order." Like I was like, "How do I act?" Because I don't want to like it was like an unspoken thing.
You want to give up the goods.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll take that. And my dad's like, "How'd you know what to get?"
Long before that, right?
That's
Yes,
funny.
indeed. Yes, indeed. But quickly get into the recap there, Richie.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think it's very simplistic. I think that the Seattle surprised everybody. I thought they kind of shot their shot when they beat the Broncos week 1. I didn't think they would play that well down the stretch, but they've had good games. Not all games have been, positive in the win column, but they've been playing. They've really outkicked their coverage as far as their win-loss record that we thought they would have at this point in the season. So, classic Pete Carroll, run the ball, play action passes, try to play solid defense. It's been more of a struggle than it's been positive. They haven't been really stout on defense, in all honesty. But their running game is very, very sneaky. It's power based, but it get downhill and they make you pay if you don't line up properly. So, and that's been an issue for us, lining up properly, getting people in the right positions, and making sure that we stop them before they get started. Because once, Kenneth Walker or Rashad Penny, and before he got hurt, before those bigger backs get downhill, man, it's gonna be a rough day. It's gonna be a rough day. When they get into the linebackers in the secondary, they're gonna have 6, 7, 8 yards at a clip. We saw what Latavius Murray did, just leaning on the line and getting 4 or 5 yards of carry in certain regards last week. So I would say that we have to focus in and hone in on that. And keep them off schedule, because he said like they want to be on schedule. We keep them off schedule, and it just really comes down to that and getting pressure on Geno because he is a mobile quarterback, and he is quite decent throwing off platform. We saw in a couple games that we've seen him on prime time in later windows that they've gotten the ball down the field when people get him out of his get him off his spot and get him moving in the pocket, and he's able to find DK and Disley and all those guys down the field. So you have to be cognizant of that. You have to keep him in the pocket, kind of wall him in and make him make decisions from the pocket. If you do that, I think it'll be a pretty decent success rate. We should have a pretty decent success rate against them on defense. Now, offense, we got to get back to running the ball. They don't have as stout of a run defense as the Broncos do. So we should readdress that. Corey Linsley should be back from this game. He only had food poisoning. It wasn't an injury. So he should be, outside of being a few pounds lighter, he should be back. So our protections, our run schemes, just our quarterback for our O-line will be back. So I think our protections will be better. I think our run game will be better. So we have to lean on that. And we just have to see who's going to play receiver this week because Keenan Allen's still questionable. Josh Palmer and Donald Parham are both in concussion protocol. How did that happen? It wasn't early on. It just came out today. So we're down a receiver. We're down 2 receivers potentially and a tight end. So we have to utilize. We got also down Josh Kelly at running back. So I would just say, make it an ugly game. Make it a low scoring game and let it be something that we can stay on schedule and manage the game and get early touchdowns and make them fight against the clock and the score. Because we get up 10 to 14 points, that running game takes a back seat. So we have to be able to do that as well. So jumping on them early and scoring points early and not starting slow will probably be the best thing we can do in this game.
No, I agree. So, Captain, I know you guys you got to head out.
Yep, I already got my
Nation
message ready.
Live.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I just wanted to thank Captain for being here, guys. Hope all the
See you,
Raiders
Cap.
fans stick around and see us to the end. We're gonna have some great content on the rest of the matchups in the AFC West. Coach or Captain, rather, you have yourself a great show on NFL Nation Live, and we'll send people your way as soon as we're done.
Thanks again, and it's always a pleasure with my donkey ketchup and mustard and my Gargler fans here on this show.
Gotta
So,
stick that in all the time, don't you?
gotta stick it. Gotta say, you guys have a great one. Stay here and then come on over NFL Nation Live. Y'all be well. Take care, and we'll see you next.
See you, Cap.
All right now.
Dude, DZ, I don't think it's a bad play to start Walker in fantasy, though. So you were a smart drafter for holding on to him.
There
I
you
say
go.
that because I did the same thing. So
Right.
So I think it's an interesting point you made. The one thing I do wonder is I think you're going to find ultimately is I believe the Seahawks tackles are better.
they do got some. Charles Cross is pretty good. I mean, he's
And
a rookie, but
Abraham
Abrams.
Lucas is good.
Abraham, right?
Abraham Lucas, yeah, he's a steal. He was a steal. I think it was a 3rd or 4th round pick. Second round pick. Okay, yeah.
Second.
So
Cross was
they
first, wasn't he? First.
Yeah,
round?
he was first round pick. Yeah,
Abram was the second.
They had multiple first and seconds in the draft from the Russell Wilson deal. So yeah, they scored on. I feel like they're first in the first part of the draft. They scored on every pick. They didn't miss one. Because even the corners they have are solid. I think the kid Tariq Woodland, he's leading the league in interceptions.
Yeah.
So
Boom, baby.
Yes.
Well,
so yeah, I think that their tackles are really good, and I think that interior pressure, which actually leans to the idea of getting of making quarterbacks uncomfortable, will probably be our best bet. Getting Morgan Fox going, let him work on them guards, and getting him in Geno's face in pass rush sets. That'd probably be a better move. But again, you got Khalil Mack going against the rookies. I would still like the idea of the matchup, but you still got to get home.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a matter of technique too. So I actually think this will be interesting because you're going against a guy that has the technical skill sets in Mac. Mm-hmm. So what this will be really interesting to see is how the rookies for the Seahawks manage a technically savvy veteran pass rusher.
Good with his hands.
Yeah, exactly.
And
he may not have the same physical tools that he once had when he was younger, but he's still got the technical hands, placements, some of those sorts of things that are just,
the only thing that hurts
level. You're not going to lose those.
That Bosa's not out there, so they can, double team him more or scheme more to overprotecting his side. But I mean, Khalil Mack's still very much Khalil Mack.
True. Very true.
Yeah, the show's better once Cap leaves, right, Jack? No, I'm just kidding. He don't watch it passes when he's on, so
you're right.
He ain't gonna see that.
So with that in mind, I think that's a really interesting. I do think that's going to be an interesting game for you. I think the Seahawks have some pieces that match up well against the Chargers.
Oh, it's definitely not a gimme. It's definitely not a gimme game at all.
And so this will be a really interesting game. And actually, if I think we're going to be honest, this is more of a let's see what you got game than the Broncos game was for the Chargers, because I think you're going against a better offensive line, and the Broncos didn't do particularly well because our offensive line is not very good. And so if the Seahawks can hold up and Geno can kind of still keep playing his game, you're not going to be able to keep sending the pass rush like you were against the Broncos and win. You're not going to get the pressure. You're not going to get the hurried throws. And, it could be a long day depending on how things work out. Especially with the up and coming corners that the Seahawks have. I mean, that can be dangerous.
Yeah, but I applaud their drafting. They did really well in the draft.
But I think if the Chargers have enough passing weapons available to be effective, I think if you get to the point where you got to win throwing the ball, you got to give that advantage to LA.
I agree with that. And you don't have the ghost of Patrick Surtain playing for the Seahawks. So I think Justin will be better this week.
And I think Justin will be better. And the Broncos pass rush, I think, is better. Leaps and bounds better.
That's another point. That's another good point. Yeah. I mean, they have you
shooting
the Wosu.
You got because the Chargers were down to their third center for most of the game. And that there's a lot that goes into playing center, especially when you got your third guy out there on making calls and adjustments, and they probably very well switch that role to someone else who's more keen to the protections and everything. But I mean, that's arguably right up there with left tackle, the one position you don't want to be without your starter, just because of how much prep and knowledge they have to have in terms of changing protections and blocking schemes and everything else. So I think with Lindsey returning, that's going to be a pretty big game changer.
Yeah. I think we run the ball, stay on schedule, use because Michelle's going to be the replacement for Kelly. So just pound the rock and keep us in second and third manageables. And let our interior tight ends and our big time wide receiver on the outside, just go to work, and I think we'll be okay. We can't sleep on the idea that they're not a team, like the caliber of the Broncos or the Chiefs or anything like that. And then we treat them like a solid team, then I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, they just need to throw to Mike Jackson.
Mike Jackson?
Yeah. I'm looking at who the other corner is. I'm like,
I'll throw on his side, right? Yeah,
Well, that'll be a thriller for sure.
There you go. Good pun. I like that.
Yeah.
Good like that.
So, perhaps moving on, Alex, to maybe toss over to you here and talk about your upcoming game. You're going to have an
Niners.
We'll call it an interesting one against the 49ers. They have a few good pieces and some strong elements, but they are also just battered by injuries. So,
they're worse than the Chargers.
So we have Kyle Matson here again for the 49ers. Kyle has been a great resource for us to give us the insight in terms of where the 49ers are at any given week. Alex, I think you might like this one. Let's see what he has to say.
Hey, I'm Kyle Matson, host of the Candlestick Chronicles podcast, co-host of the Candlestick Chronicles podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm also a writer or the managing editor of NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today sports media group. All right, so 3 things the 49ers have to do to beat the Chiefs. We're going to start with prayer, and lots of it. That, I think, is where it's going to start for the 49ers. Whether it doesn't, the deity, doesn't matter. Just a lot of happy thoughts, good vibes, and plenty of prayer throughout the week. I suggest they start Wednesday, maybe one before, maybe one after practice. Each day, Saturday walkthrough, get one in. Sunday pregame, get one in. I don't think that they can pray enough, frankly. And like I said, deity, doesn't matter. That is neither here nor there. Maybe the football gods are the ones to pray to. No. So there's a couple things that the 49ers can do in what I think is going to be their toughest game of the season. Certainly to this point, and maybe all year. They have some really tough games down the stretch, but this Chiefs team just might be the best in the league. And honestly, I think a fully healthy version of the 49ers, like let's say they meet in the Super Bowl again, I think it'll be a much different game. But number one, the Niners need to get healthy somehow. So Nick Bosa and Trent Williams have both been out. Nick Bosa has a groin injury. Trent Williams has a high ankle sprain. Kyle Shanahan said that there is a chance, a decent chance that they both play. And that would be huge for the 49ers. But it can't stop with those two guys. They're certainly better on the offensive line with Trent Williams. They're better on the defensive line with Nick Bosa. But I'm looking also at Mike McGlinchey, their starting right tackle, who has a calf contusion and is day-to-day. His status for Sunday is up in the air. I'm looking at Charvarius Ward. Of course, Chiefs fans will know him. He's been like an all-pro caliber cornerback for the 49ers this year. He has been superb in all facets. He hurt his groin in Atlanta. He's also day-to-day. His status for Sunday is up in the air. You look at George Kittle's been a little banged up, although he looks a little better over the last couple weeks. There's like a couple of Hail Marys, like maybe Eric Armstead gets healthy. That's where the prayer comes in. Maybe Eric Armstead gets healthy. Maybe Jimmy Ward, their starting free safety, he has a broken hand. They said he can play in a cast. It doesn't sound like he's going to be able to play this week, but it sounds like he'll eventually be able to play in that cast. If they get a couple of miracle health things like that, I think it would help immensely. But certainly Bosa and Williams playing would help. If those two guys are out, I have a really hard time charting a path to victory for the 49ers against a team as talented as Kansas City. The other realistic thing the 49ers can do is just not turn the ball over. They're 0-3 this year when they turn it over more than once, and they're 3-0 when they don't. So it started last week against Atlanta. Jeff Wilson Jr. fumbles. Atlanta returns it for a touchdown. Suddenly a 7-0 Atlanta leads 14-0. And then Garoppolo threw 2 interceptions on top of that, including when they were driving in the second half, early in the fourth quarter, trying to make it a one-score game. So they cannot do that against Kansas City. The 49ers have a small margin for error typically anyways, but against an offense as explosive as Kansas City, with all the injuries that the 49ers have on defense, it's just not realistic to expect a turnover at midfield or in their own territory and expect, 2 or 3 backup defensive linemen and a bunch of rotational defensive linemen playing bigger roles than they usually do. It's just not realistic to expect them to get stops, especially since they got pushed around a little bit against Atlanta. Atlanta was running kind of at will, and not for big plays, but 4-5 yards at a time, getting in 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6, getting to 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1. And if you're letting the Chiefs get to 2nd and 5 and 3rd and 1, like, they're going to convert all day, and it's just going to be easy work. So one of the things they can do to mitigate that and just kind of limit possessions for Kansas City is just to not turn the ball over. We know Jimmy Garoppolo can be efficient, especially on shorter throws. They're pushing the ball down the field a little bit more. He's throwing 20-plus yards down the field 9.5% of the time. That's the highest of his career with the 49ers. So keeping the Chiefs honest there. They nearly connected on a couple of deep balls against Atlanta, but they were both dropped. So executing on those plays, opening things up for the run game, and then just controlling the ball. That's number 3. That's the realistic number 3. So getting healthy, not turning the ball over, and they have to run. The best way with the defense as it currently stands, the best way they can slow down the Chiefs is keep them on the sideline. That's it. So Jeff Wilson Jr. needs to be good. Maybe that means mixing in Ty Davis-Price, their 3rd-round rookie from LSU, who's finally healthy. Mixing in Tevin Coleman, who had a couple of touchdowns against Carolina. Like, just keeping fresh backs in the game, churning out 3, 4, 5 yards a carry, and then allowing Garoppolo to go to work on play action. Although he's been better out of not in non-play action this year, which is kind of strange and atypical, but controlling the clock, holding onto the football, not turning it over, and running effectively, I think are all things that could possibly lead to a 49ers victory. Even if all that goes right, they may not be able to win. I think if the Chiefs are going to put up 27, 30, 34 points, I think it's kind of a wrap. But if the Niners can hold on to the ball, get ahead by 10, maybe 14 if they get a touchdown and stop another score, force Kansas City to be one-dimensional, then maybe they have a shot. But if they're not healthy, they turn the ball over once or twice, and their run game doesn't get going, I think it's night-night for San Francisco. So those are my 3 keys to victory for the 49ers on Sunday.
He said it right, though. It's night-night.
Night. So we're done, and we can move on to the next.
I need prayer was the funniest thing.
Hey, I will give him this. At least his first key was the most objective one, right? So gotta
give him credit. I think the only shot is to run the ball, honestly. I agree with the keys and the points that he made. I wholeheartedly agree. If this was a more healthy 49er squad, it's a much different tone going into the game than it is, currently postured. The fact is that, you prefaced it going into it, Richie. This 49ers team's just egregiously banged up. I made a point to write out last year. It looked like
I made a point to write out the injury list, and it is significantly larger than KC's. And like I said, heading into or talking about the Bills game, that's kind of the good news for the Chiefs. While they've also been, in my opinion, playing better every week in terms of offensive production and moving the ball. They're also getting healthier every week. And I think in this game, we're going to see McDuffie come back. So you're going to see some more starting caliber players being injected into the secondary. They're also getting Willie Gay back, which will help with the recent woes and stopping the heavy run attack. And I mean, we know that's how Kyle Shanahan bases his offense. 49ers, since he's been there, have always been a run-heavy team. So you know that that's going to be the approach that San Fran takes going into it. I mean, like I said, just looking at it, there's a lot of key injuries that are either for sure outs for this game or 50-50 calls. A lot up front. I mean, if you don't have Nick Bosa alone, who didn't practice today, I mean, that's a significantly different narrative change for the game than if he's out there. Eric Armstead's also out.
Rough sledding, man.
Trent Williams, Mike McGlinchey, both tackles, probably not playing. It's going to be tough. And you know, I think it's. Well, I don't think it's going to be a runaway game. I just don't see with how the Chiefs have played up to this point that they're not going to come out with a W. You know, my keys to their victory for the Chiefs really kind of intertwine with sort of what he was talking about. I mean, the number one thing I wrote down is I think KC needs to make Jimmy G beat them. I mean, he's. While he's been successful, I mean, his current stats, he's a very average QB, and he's, I think, consistently shown that when the game comes down to where he's got to win by his arm. I mean, more likely than not, he's not going to do that. I mean, you heard him talking about it against Atlanta alone. It got to the point where Jimmy G had to be the guy to win it, and he threw 2 picks. And I think with their defense being banged up, that's going to be how the game plays out, is where the Niners aren't going to be able to rely on the run as much once we get later into the game. And it's going to be kind of how the Super Bowl played out, where Jimmy G is going to have to make some big time throw that at least up to this point in his career, he hasn't made. So, you know, that's the biggest key for me. And I think that you'll see them make a better effort at stopping the run. One, because Willie Gay's back, but they know that's how teams have been playing him up to this point. So I think you see them make more of an effort to do that. The second one for me was to, you know, attack the Niners secondary. And, you know, I mean, he talked about it, pretty banged up. You got Jimmy Ward, who, at least from what I've saw, might play, but if he does, he's going to have a club. You got Charvarius Ward, who
He'll be clubbing.
Yeah. He's gonna be batting them down. At least you don't have to think about catching it.
Clubs.
But you got Charvarius Ward, who's very much a game time call. And I think that while he's been playing pretty good, I think the Chiefs will know how, you know, what makes him tick with him being in KC. I think that you'll see them attack him more in ways they know that he's is a weakness in his coverage game. But on top of that, you also have Mosley, who tore his ACL, who was their other starting corner. So, I mean, essentially looking at the defensive matchup, you're looking at a Niners team that's going to probably be without their outside rushing efforts and outside secondary, you know, players. So, I mean, you tell me any team in the league that's going to go into a game and that's going to be, you know, a good plan for him. But, you know, I just think that you see him, you know, hit the key spots in the banged up secondary. You saw him. I mean, Juju, I think, came around this last game. He caught all of his 5 targets for 113 yards and a touchdown. I think you see him build off of that. And I know I've said it a few times, but I really believe that they're really close with Hardman, kind of doing some of the route schemes that they did with Tyreek, and it's just a matter of Mahomes and him kind of meshing on the touch for those throws and the difference of, you know, his speed versus Tyreek's. But every game they've almost hit him for if he catches it, it's a touchdown. And I think you see him keep trying to do that. And one of these weeks it's going to hit, and then they'll build off that. But you know, that I think if we just get into where it's a passing game and it's a Jimmy G versus Mahomes, matchup on who's more effective to win, you got to. I mean, as much as Chief haters are out there, you have to give the the benefit to KC on that one. The third one for me was
Jack, you're hilarious, but you might be right.
Oh, dude, King's up. Let's go. No, but the third one for me was to employ a quick passing game. But I've kind of, I guess, beaten a dead horse at this point because I feel like I always talk about that. But you see them do that early on, especially when the run's not being as effective out of the gate. You see them do those quick bubbles and quick slants and get the ball out fast to kind of negate some of the pass rushing efforts. And especially with how the tackles have played up to this point. I mean, Orlando Brown has not been – he's been kind of a shell of who he was last year, especially in the offseason demanding, the money Trent Williams got and then kind of performing how he has up to this point. But I think you see them come out and pass quick and often to help sort of protect the offensive line to some sense and relieve a little bit of the edge rushing efforts, given kind of the weakness they have, at least at the tackle spots. And then the last one, which is kind of an obvious one, but just kind of the attention to the small details. And I think that's what's really killed them against Buffalo. Like the one that stands out is, I think it was right before the half, Mahomes tried to throw a 50-50 ball into the red zone, or not right before the half, it was the first drive, but tried to throw a 50-50 ball into the red zone to Scantling and ended up being a pick, and you left points off. You had an empty possession in the red zone when they could have at least gotten a field goal. And, I mean, as you saw, the final score came out, it was those kind of small details or just small little mistakes that you don't normally see them make that were the big factor in that game. So I think if they negate, some of those choices and some drives ending out because of an errant kind of decision, I don't really see how KC loses this, especially with the Niners being as banged up as they are. But with that being said, up to this point, at least in the recent games, the Chiefs haven't been that good at stopping the run. So I do think that it will be a close game until we get to probably midpoint of the third quarter, and then you'll see KC run away with it. But in terms of a score prediction, I mean, I think you're looking at kind of like a 27-17, a close but a decent margin of victory for KC. And really, it's just going to boil down to how effectively they can stop the run early to force Garoppolo to have to win the game.
No, I think that's fair.
In the words of Orlando Brown, as I got to go after this, but in the words of Orlando Brown, easy money.
Yeah.
Easy money.
Yeah. But, and two, I mean, I meant to say this at the start, but I mean, I know the news, at least in the kingdom sense, maybe not the national sense, but Kelsey, freed up, restructured his contract to free up about $3.5 million in cap space. I doubt we see him make a significant move before this Niners game, but he even prefaced it on his own podcast. He's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "A move's coming." So it'll be interesting to see what that is. I hope it's a guy out of Carolina named Brian Burns, but
yeah, wishful thinking.
Yeah, right.
Wishful thinking.
Everyone wants it to be OBJ, the other one, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know what that would do, but I just thought that'd be interesting to bring up. I know we're kind of out of the realm and talking about the Niners, but it'll be interesting to see what KC does with that.
Well, I mean, they're clearly going to do something because you don't free up that kind of space midseason.
For nothing. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. You just don't do it without, planning on doing something.
Right.
But
I got to run, guys. Good show. I'll catch you guys later.
Appreciate it.
See you, Coach.
So I'm going to be delving into the Jets game against the Broncos now. I'm going to be going through it pretty quickly. We're getting kind of lower on time here.
Yeah.
But I just want to let everyone know who is still with us here what I'm going to be doing actually tomorrow is JETScentral has invited me over to give a talk on their channel about the Broncos. If all of you guys that are interested, please go ahead and check out JETScentral on YouTube. I will be we haven't finalized everything 100%. It'll either be live or recorded, but go check me out over there. I'm going to be giving my Broncos takes on the Jets, and that'll be a really interesting one. And guys, with that intro and that shameless plug, which I own.
The show's full of them.
Oh, full of them, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and throw over to JETScentral and what the Jets need to do to beat my Denver Broncos.
All right, guys. So first things first, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. It really means a lot. I love this channel and, everything that everyone does. But I would say the first thing that the Jets need to do to honestly upset the Denver Broncos in Denver, I believe the Vegas line was Jets +3 on the road. So still considered an underdog. The first thing, they have to start fast. Whether you want to look at this season or last season, when the Jets start slow, when they're down 10-0, 14-0 in the first quarter, typically they lose the game. They just have a hard time battling back in the second and third quarters. Fourth quarter, the New York Jets really turn it up. They can rack up points. They start going in a more hurry up and everything like that. But if the deficit is too big, you pretty much have the Jets beat. I hate to say it, but that's just the reality, right? Again, we are, a little right around the halfway point of this season, but we can point to really all of last season. When the Jets start slow, they tend to lose games. Second thing, feed the running backs. Breece Hall, right now, he's the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year, coming off two of his best games of his career. Granted, it's such a short sample size, him being only a rookie, but he's coming off two amazing games. Continue to feed Breece Hall. He had 20 carries last week, over 100 rushing yards with that touchdown. Struggled early on, week 1, week 2, week 3, had a fumble, had a couple drops, didn't really get the overall volume that I would have liked because Breece was a second-round pick and the Jets traded up for him, but now he's really separating himself as a lead back for this Jets offense. But behind Breece Hall, whenever he gets tired, if he needs to come out, whatever the case is, they have Michael Carter as well. We take a look at Zach Wilson's numbers last week, where they beat the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau by 3 possessions, 27-10. Zach Wilson only completed 10 passes, 10 of 18. He didn't throw a touchdown, threw for under 150 passing yards. Why? The running backs, they really did their thing. I think it's so important to continue to feed those young guys. And then lastly, they got to keep it close in the fourth quarter, right? If it's 2020, if it's 17-17 going into the fourth, the Jets have proved it multiple times this season. Again, whether you want to talk about the Packers game, the Steelers game, even the Browns game. I know the Browns game was a little bit of an anomaly just because you had the broken coverage on the back end of Cleveland's defense, and you're essentially down 2 possessions with 1:45 left. So you could, if you want to make an argument, hey, that win was a little fluky. Granted, I understand that, but it still happens. Okay, so in Cleveland, in Pittsburgh, in Lambeau, the Jets made it happen, right? They were able to put teams away in the fourth quarter, close out games. That is something that's been really, really rare for this Jets team in recent memory with Adam Gase and, last season, Adam Gase before that, and Todd Bowles before that. Okay, so for me, those are the 3 things. Thanks so much for having me. I run a YouTube channel called JETScentral covering all things New York Jets. Good luck.
Oh, hi. Welcome back. That's JETScentral. He and I kind of followed that for a good period of time. Let's just say we know each other. And we've had some great times together. I've been on his channel a good number of times, and I've always had a great time there. He made some great points. He really did. I think it's very interesting. I'm gonna circle back, and I'm gonna basically stand my ground on some of my previous comments earlier in the podcast here. In my opinion, the Denver Broncos have an offensive line that leaves much to be desired. And I also have a major issue with some of the things I'm seeing with my Denver Broncos. A few things to kind of call out here. In my opinion, I think Nathaniel Hackett is being held back. And I'm seeing a few things that are really concerning. I've heard comments from Nathaniel Hackett saying I was given permission to go for it on 4th down in one of his pressers, which, my general comment is, who's giving you permission to do anything? You're the freaking head coach, right?
Yeah, you're running the show, man.
Yeah, like you're running the show.
Come on.
So I have a huge issue with comments like that. Huge issue with comments like that. And it really does make me wonder what's really going on and who's running or who's pulling the puppet strings, if you will, behind Nathaniel Hackett, because that tells me that it's very difficult to then put blame on someone who is not necessarily in full control of what's going on the field, or if someone is saying, you cannot do this unless I tell you so. And if that's the case, how can you put any blame on someone who's not able to actually do the things that he wants to do? So with that in mind, I'm looking ahead and I'm saying, okay, I actually really like Calvin Anderson at left tackle. I think he does a very good job. And I thought he did a very good job against the Chargers. We did change up the offensive line, which I think is more of the Broncos kind of trying to pull a New England or the Raiders in terms of cycling offensive linemen to see if they find a different version of it that they like.
Favorite, though, at center, didn't they?
And then they left the offensive center there, who's just a freaking turnstile in cleats, right? So in my opinion, if the Broncos are going to have any chance of doing anything specifically in the run game, which is I really think what the Broncos need to start getting back to, which is run Melvin Gordon, run Latavius Murray, run Mike Boone, and start bringing up Divine Azigbo from the practice squad, because those are bruiser running backs that can break away on a run at any given moment. Put those guys in and really hammer the ball home to keep this a controlled game so that we don't let the game get ahead of us or out of control in terms of score-wise. I also think that the Broncos need to put in Brett Rippon instead of Russell Wilson. I think at the end of the day, we need to look at the long-term success of the team, and we need to look even past this year if we're going to be honest with ourselves. And you need to put in Brett Rippon, let it rip, if you will. That's what we
Broncos
say.
country. Let's rip
Broncos country. And so if we're going to really kind of call a duck here, I think we need to have Brett Rippon in. You saw him in preseason come from behind and actually win QB2. He is a solid quarterback. He really is that good. And I think he really fits the outside zone kind of Hackett scheme. And I'm hoping that with Russ out and Brett in, that whoever is marionetting Hackett will let go of the strings and see what happens. And I think that if you see that happen, I believe that Hackett's true colors and what we saw in preseason for the Denver Broncos will be on full display. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see how the scheme, I guess, changes if Russ isn't out there. I did want to ask kind of what Callahan referenced. I haven't seen any sort of news, but I wanted to see what sort of insight you had to the Gordon situation, because I thought it was interesting that Hackett said today he is starting this next week outside of being benched. So I didn't know if you had any sort of insight as to why he wasn't playing in that Monday night game. And they essentially didn't use him. I don't think they gave him 3 touches. So they didn't use him at all.
I mean, in my opinion, it's either George Payton and John Elway, or a combination of a group of people that are basically they're reaching up and then they're speaking, but they're using Hackett to say the words, because it seems weird to me as a Broncos fan, where I saw Hackett do the things to prepare for preseason. Because that was clearly a Hackett show. He was calling all the plays. He was on the mic making all the plays. There was no one in his ear saying blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
He was doing all of the things all of the time. And you saw game flow. You saw continuity between kind of like A and B. You even saw stacked plays where early in the game he would call certain looks and then he'd flip that in the latter part of the game to kind of use those previous looks to then build a different play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, these are all chess moves from guys that know what they're doing in the offensive side of the ball, and it's very, very important that Hackett be given that leeway to showcase his offensive skill sets and what he can do. And in my opinion, he's not really being given that opportunity. I actually think that a lot of it has to do with Russell Wilson has a bit of an ego, in my opinion. I also think he has. Pardon me?
It kind of just carries this pedigree that you got this guy, you paid him this money, like the offense should be running through him, and certain changes in mindset should be had because of who you got.
Right. And I think he has a bit of an ego, in my opinion, with Russell Wilson. I think there's also a pressure to put it all on him. I think that Russell Wilson is hurt right now and is unwilling to take himself out of the equation, even though it may be best for both him and the team. And I also think that because of the money that was put into him, I think a guy like Peyton and even John Elway as a consultant are kind of all piling on to kind of suppress what everyone really ought to do within the Denver Broncos, which is let Russell Wilson sit on the bench, let him heal, put in Brett Rippon, wait till after the bye, and hopefully Russ will have enough time to get back to his normal self and will be able to succeed again. And I do not believe that Brett Rippon is such a huge downgrade to Russell Wilson that it will be that detrimental to our team, especially if we play the true Hackett outside zones type system and not start intermixing all of this Seattle-esque plays and try to dovetail kind of two systems together. And I think that you're going to start to see some better results there. Although I do think we need to see better offensive line play. We need to see a change at offensive center if we're going to have any chance of success at all this season.
Hopefully they do that too with old Quinnen Williams being in the middle of the line. But one thing I did think was interesting, and at least my impression as a Chiefs fan watching Broncos games, they are very effective. I mean, literally their defense is the reason they're in half of the games, and they are very effective. All their games, but
thank you. Okay,
but they are, overall very effective at stopping the run. Outside of, I think the Raiders game was the one where they seemed to give up more. But I thought it was interesting, at least from the Jets outset looking in. Obviously. He made a big emphasis of talking about Breece Hall and Michael Carter and how they are effective when they feed the running backs and don't force Zach Wilson to have to make plays. And I mean, from my point, I would love for them to feed Breece Hall the ball because of Javonte Williams getting hurt. That is my RB1 in one fantasy league. But, I think that at least the Denver defense is going to be at a better caliber than what the Jets have seen in terms of stopping the run up to this point. And I think that, they're going to have a much harder time than at least the success they've had in the past recent weeks with moving the ball against Denver because they won't be able to rely on the run as much as they have, at least in the I think they played Miami, Green Bay, and I can't even remember who else, but I mean, either way, I think you're gonna see them have a harder time to be as offensively successful as they've been in the past 3 weeks and I think that's kind of Denver's saving grace in this game, given kind of the opposite trajectories the two teams have gone up to this point. But I think just at least objectively speaking, Denver has probably the best defense they've faced up to this point of the season. Maybe outside of the Browns, but I don't even know because I don't think Myles Garrett played in that game. So I just think that that'll be the saving grace, which it's been for Denver at least this point of the year. But I just thought it was interesting that he made a point to talk about them being successful on running the ball when that's kind of been what Denver's been successful at stopping.
Yeah, well, DJ Jones was really the main reason for that. We really struggled when he wasn't in the game where he was coming off an injury, really, and he wasn't fully healthy yet against the Raiders. You saw that impact our ability to kind of do what we needed to do in that game. That being said, the Raiders also had a very good plan. They boxed out our defensive ends, which allowed really wide open running lanes. That's probably a different discussion for a different show, but I don't want to start boring everyone with kind of the intricacies of, blocking schemes and what it meant when, the Raiders did a certain thing and the Broncos didn't counter. But at the end of the day, what we really need to start focusing on with the Denver Broncos is, if we can rely on our defense to continue to play the way it is, what our offense needs to do is to play that proper and appropriate complementary role. Like they need to manage the game. And part of that is methodically move the ball down the field. You don't always need to go for massive chunk plays. In fact, some of what will really help our Broncos is give the defense even more time to scheme on the sidelines. Give those methodical movements down the field by 4 and 5 yard runs, by fixing your offensive center position by putting in Graham Glasgow instead of Cushenberry. Miners is back off of injury. You had the perfect opportunity to do that in practice with the extended week, the 10-day week, and you didn't do it. Like, these are all things that make zero sense to me as to why the Broncos are where they are, because we have some obvious answers. I'm not even saying and just for the record, so that I'm not like quoted by saying something stupid, which is
we'd never do that.
Oh, yeah, of course. It's the internet. Who would ever quote you for being, who would ever take something out of context and try to say it's wrong? But anyways, with regards to this, I don't think Glasgow's the answer at center. That being said, Cushenberry is definitely not the answer.
He's a better answer than what you got.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if we're going to have any chance at doing anything this season, we need to do better at the offensive center position. We need to do a better job at run blocking. And it's very, very difficult for left guards to overcompensate for a center who is letting guys blast through. And that will also help us, in my opinion. I think the verdict is in on Lloyd Cushenberry. So in my opinion, he seems like a great guy, a great teammate, seems to be extremely smart. But if you don't have the tools and you can't adapt to the NFL, then you just can't cut it, right? So fair enough. Now, on the flip side of that, Reisner looked really good in the left guard position and the outside zone blocking scheme when he had a better offensive center in his rookie season and a scheme that better fit him. So my question here is, okay, well, if Reisner looked good once in this system and he doesn't look good now, is that because he's trying to compensate for a weaker offensive center? Or is that just because he's regressed and he's now to a point where he's potentially unfixable? And I think we need to see that. And you can't get that answer for the Denver Broncos if you don't replace the center to see if Dalton Reisner has regressed as well.
Yeah.
And I'm only saying that because he found himself on his back a handful of times, at least, against the Chargers, and that's concerning.
Well, and it might, especially in an outside zone scheme, because a lot of that is kind of stab, wait for the guy behind you to overtake and work up, and that could be part of the problem if the center's not able to overtake a one technique or a head up 2-eye or 3 technique on the guard, and he's having to stay there longer to ensure that gets because obviously that's that you want to hit the first level before you hit the second level.
Right.
And so, certainly if the O-line's not gelling, especially in an outside zone type scheme where you all have to be kind of working in one cohesive unit. I know that's cliche to say, but that's even more imperative in an approach like that than it would be in just your general inside zone, because at least in that, the running back always has a cutback. They do it in outside zone, but it's harder to do that when the whole flow is going to one boundary line. So I certainly say if they changed at center, I think that you would see some of those things play out better. But I thought it's interesting, talking about Ripien coming in, and using or having more of a point of these methodical drives. I think you would see that more when you put someone in like a backup. And you saw it in Dallas with Cooper Rush. You don't see him take as riskier shots and stuff. And to the same tone, you don't see a backup QB throw this deep ball because his experience or instinct from prior games would tell him it might be there. You see a backup read the play and the coverage the way it's supposed to be read and hit whatever's open, whether that be the RB in the flat or, the post over the middle. But I think that when you have a backup and you see a lot safer plays and you see a lot more sustainable drives, because of the fact that they're hitting the plays display the way they're supposed to be hit, rather than an instinctual NFL vet saying, "Hey, I know I can throw this and it might be there, it might not, but I'm going to try it."
I agree. Well, guys, that's going to be our show for today. We'd like to thank you very much for joining us on the Wild Wild West podcast. Until next Wednesday, where the West Side is the best side. Peace.